Our first question this week comes from PORKSODA, who says, everyone expected players like Burks, Knox, and Boyd to play well, and for the most part I think they have. Who are some of the players that have stood out to you this season that may be flying under the radar? If we're talking the whole season, Ricky Stromberg, a four-star freshman guard, but lately, got to say John Stephen Jones and KJ Jefferson, those guys have been under the radar because they didn't play, and that's over. Jones will start this week. Jefferson will play early, according to the coaches. That's the way it's going to be. AF Warrior 83 asks, at what point can the university afford Chad Morris's buyout if the program continues to go south, if that's even possible? You know, if Hunter Yurachek decides to fire Morris now, he's got the money. But with all the debt the athletic department has, would that be smart? Well, you could make a pretty good argument for yes to that, considering all the money that's being lost in poor attendance. But I do predict that moving forward, buyouts won't be an issue. I see Hunter Yurachek offering incentive-based contracts to the next football coach he hires, not a contract that rewards failure with a big buyout. Midway 642 wants to know, with a 2-10 season looming for the Razorbacks, what is, in your opinion, how will that affect the committed and future recruits for the class of 22? Depends on who you hire. If you hire the right guy, you're not going to lose much, and you'll probably gain some recruits who would come in with the new coach. Same with the players transferring out. Most would wait to check out the new guy, and from my experience, most will stay if you hire the right guy. I was there in 1969, wants to know. So Mike, has the University of Arkansas football team hit rock bottom yet? Maybe. Can't get much worse than what we saw on Saturday, up to the point where John Stephen Jones and KJ Jefferson came into the game. And as I said, they're your quarterbacks now. And according to Chad Morris, they got all the reps in Sunday's practice. So maybe it's uphill from here on out. I've said over and over that the quarterback problem is killing this team. Most of the fans know that. Apparently the players know it too because of the way Jefferson's teammates reacted after that 4-play touchdown drive. I'd say things are looking up, but still, we might have to revisit this question after the Western Kentucky game. Okay, this guy, however you pronounce that, asked, what historical Razorback team do you think was the best fielded since you've been reporting on the Hogs? What is the best college team you've seen? Mine is the 2010 team for the Hogs. No question, the 77 Razorbacks. They were one Earl Campbell play away from winning a national championship. Now, that was Lou Holtz's team, but it was built on Frank Broyles' last 4 recruiting classes. Now, the best college team ever? Take your pick. Any one of several undefeated Nick Saban teams at Alabama. Pig in Paradise says, in the previous segment, you stated they don't need their head coach or the position coaches doing game planning stuff on Friday nights. Have you read Mike Leach's book? He has team meetings on Friday nights. Well, Mike Leach is a different cat, but he's not the only coach that does that. Some do, some don't. But here's my point. Entire staffs of coaches hit the road on selected Friday nights to recruit during the season. So they're not back at the team hotel. Do you really think the players are sitting in their rooms thinking, where's my head coach? We can't win. Again, if this team had a winning record right now, this would not be a point of discussion. But here's an interesting variation on this subject. Bullfield says you adamantly say separating a family for over 2 years for a job has no impact on the job. And interestingly, you say, if he was winning, we would not ask the question. Do you also think separating a family like this is unfair to his family and has no impact on his family? Well, first of all, I don't think that's what I said. Again, on several occasions, I've addressed the issue of Morris not being with his players on Friday nights. But this is an entirely different twist to that Morris could possibly be affected by being separated from his wife and son. Hey, that's possible, especially if they've never been apart like this before. But how would we know? Unless we were close to him or close to people close to his family. Morris has said nothing about this affecting him. I have to believe when he took the job, he sat down with his son and his wife, and they discussed how to handle this situation. And they at some point agreed to this split living arrangement for 2 years. Now, perhaps it turned out to be a bigger deal than they thought, and they wish they hadn't done it. If Chad Morris is let go, maybe he will talk about this at some point in the future. And then if so, your theory would be either confirmed or thrown out the window. Dr. Starks asks, can you name specifically who is part of the Good Old Boy Network and how much are they to blame for the demise of our once proud football program? You know, I knew most of these guys when Frank was the AD, but that was a different situation. They almost always supported what he did. These days, these guys tend to work toward what they want, but mostly they stay in the background. However, when they thought Malzahn could be hired, I'm told they flexed their muscles and Jeff Long was gone just like that. But when Gus turned him down to stay at Auburn, supposedly they came up with Morris. Now this has never been proven to me. And some that I talked to continue to insist that the interim AD made this hire with help from at least one board member and maybe a booster or two. But if so, I don't know who these people were. Believe me, I've tried to find out. Other boosters I know won't tell me if they do know, and they claim they don't know, which I don't believe. But look, the past is the past. What really matters now is, will these boosters try to get involved if Yurachek fires Morris? They weren't dealing with a real AD the last time. Now they would be. I've been told that there was some effort to influence the basketball hire last spring, and it didn't work. Hunter Yurachek hired the coach he wanted, and I believe the same thing would happen with football. Some would try to influence the AD. Hopefully, he hires his guy and not theirs. If a change is made, Kevin wants to know, as a media member, how do you believe a word that comes out of Coach Morris's mouth? He seems to go beyond coach speak to flat out lying. You know, we're talking about coaches. Technically, almost all coaches I've been around have lied at one time or another. And I would call it kind of concealing the truth, and sometimes it's necessary. We all understand that. A lot of times, though, it's not. And if as a reporter I can prove it, I'll call them out. But a lot of times you only know they're lying after they've been fired. Now, has Morris lied? I can't prove that he has. I'm pretty sure he has concealed the truth a few times. For good reason? I don't know. From my experience, Morris mostly evades answering questions that he doesn't want to answer. And that doesn't make him unique. How about when he was asked why he didn't pull Ben Hicks sooner against Mississippi State? Morris said Hicks' early struggles were a result of dropped passes, and he thought he'd played well if that didn't happen. Well, the facts don't exactly support that, but maybe Morris believes it. These things are not always clear. Okay, I've modified the next question slightly to make the question a little more clear. ADROITFUL asked, why do you think it is that we saved KJ Jefferson? We're in desperate need of a mobile quarterback, and there was one on the bench. We could have used some of his 4 games earlier in the season to see if he had it, and if so, then we could forget about the red shirt. Man, that is an excellent what-if question. Probably 90% of the fan base is asking the same thing. Chad Morris has basically said that Jefferson wasn't ready back then. My point for weeks has been you don't really know for sure until you put him in a game. And if he had surprised us earlier in the season the way he did last Saturday, there might have been an extra win or two as a result, and Jefferson would be a lot farther along with the offense than Chad Morris says he is right now. HOBHOG is curious, how is Morris's relationship with the media at this point? Seems like his body language has changed along with the general tone of his answers. I haven't picked up on that. And he's not somebody that lashes out or expresses frustration with certain questions. I'm sure he's stressed, but to me it's not obvious that he's changed his demeanor in press conferences. I've mentioned that he's evasive with certain questions, but that's not unique to him. Piglet says, a lot of fans on Hogville are calling for firing Morris at the end of the season, but what do you think? Which would be best or worse for the program if he is let go after year 2 or kept for 1 more year? This is where ADs earn their paychecks. Now, a fan on Twitter messaged me yesterday, and he claimed that most fans would love to trade places with Hunter Yurachek. They might, up to the point where they got to fire Chad Morris. Then what? How do you work the buyout? How do you convince a quality replacement to take the job without offering the moon, which they don't have? How do you pay his buyout? How do you pay his assistants, who are almost certainly going to want more money than the guys they're replacing? How would you deal with an agent like Jimmy Sexton, who often eats athletic directors for lunch when it comes time to negotiate? All of this while the fans are sitting back going, hey, what's the holdup? Give us our new outstanding coach who will turn our program around. And what if you hired the wrong guy, and a couple of years later, your name is mud and everybody hates you? Yeah, you'd trade places with Yurachek. Sure you would, if you didn't have a lick of sense. Now, what would I do? I'd probably make a change now. and get ready to deal with agents and players hitting the transfer portal and more recruits decommitting, while hoping I could get a coach who could keep those commitments and pull current players out of the portal. Then I would sit back and cross my fingers and hope I didn't just make a big mistake. Well, that's it for this week. I'll be back next Monday for another edition of Ask Mike.